seized the opportunity for peace. That was the message from the United Nations to, of course, the Ethiopian government and rebels in the northern Tigray region. The return of hostilities in the north of Ethiopia last month has devastated the country's hard-earned progress towards a lasting peace. After almost 2 years of war and widespread destruction, the fragile hope that communities in Tigray, Afar and Amhara were grappling at has been stolen. The crisis has displaced millions of people and created a humanitarian crisis. Now, fighters from the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) say they are open to a ceasefire and are ready to accept an African Union-led peace process, something they have dismissed in the past. Today we shall be understanding why, of course, there is persistent fighting in the Tigray region despite efforts to broker a ceasefire. Stay with us. Hello Africa and the world, thank you immensely for joining us on this fresh edition of Voice It over your Pan-African channel For You Media. If you're watching us on For You Television or of course on For You or listening to us on For You Radio, this is Voice It, and today we are discussing the crisis in Ethiopia's Tigray region, of course, where fighting persists despite efforts by the government and of course the rebels to put a stop to the war. Of course, today I will not be alone. I will be joined by SHITTU, who is the digital news editor from Nigeria. Good afternoon to you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, as I was earlier saying, I will not be joined alone on today's edition of Voice It, as we are discussing the crisis in Tigray, Ethiopia's Tigray region. Of course, a persistent fighting has been ongoing there despite efforts to broker a ceasefire there in the Horn of Africa. And today, as I was saying, we are joined by SHITTU, who is the digital news editor, and he's joining us all the way from Nigeria. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon.
It's a pleasure having you. We shall equally be joined by FABRICE LENA, who is a political analyst here in Cameroon, as well as the Secretary General for the Popular Actions Party. Okay, before we, of course, get down to the table and start today's topic of discussion, I'd like you to take a listen to this report compared to us by our newsroom. Of centralizing power at the expense of Ethiopia's regions. Abiy denies this and has accused the Tigrayan forces of trying to reclaim power, which they have denied. After several failed attempts to restore peace in Ethiopia's conflict-hit Tigray region, an air strike hit Mekelle, the capital of Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, on Tuesday, wounding at least one person in a local hospital, officials said. The airstrike happened less than 48 hours after the Tigrayan regional government said they were ready to take part in an AU-led peace process without preconditions. All these in efforts to try to end its war with the central government, which erupted in November 2020. The Ethiopian government has not yet provided an official response to the talks and ceasefire offered by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the party that governs Tigray. Kibrom Gebre Selassie, the chief executive officer of Mekelle's Ada Hospital, said the hospital had received one wounded person from Tuesday's airstrike. He added that the strike had hit the business campus of Mekelle University and Dimiti Yowane TV station, which the regional government runs. The TPLF dominated national politics for nearly 3 decades until Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power in 2018. The TPLF had accused Abiy of centralizing power at the expense of Ethiopia's regions. Abiy denies this and has accused the Tigrayan forces of trying to reclaim power, which they have denied. After several failed attempts to restore peace in Ethiopia's conflict, Was it for the report regarding the crisis that is ongoing in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Okay, I'm going to kick off with you, SHITTU. What is your overview of the ongoing Tigray crisis that is ongoing at the moment? Hello, SHITTU.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can get you 5 on 5. So I was asking you, having listened to the report, what is your overview of the crisis that is ongoing in Ethiopia's Tigray region?
It is a sad development that, in spite of efforts to bring about peace for over a year now, the conflict between the central government of Ethiopia and Tigray has continued, and it has caused a lot of humanitarian disaster of unimaginable proportion. Hospitals have been affected, businesses have been affected, schools, education has been affected, people have been displaced. It's a human catastrophe. It's really, really disturbing that Ethiopia will find itself in such a situation at the moment. And the lack of peace is the source of worry in that in the entire region, because Ethiopia has a far-reaching implication to countries like Djibouti and Eritrea, for example. So it is really sad, and whatever it takes to bring about peaceful resolution of the issues in contention has to be done.
Yeah, of course, it will take a lot for them to resolve this crisis. But then what do you think is the root cause of this crisis that is ongoing in Tigray, given that it has been ongoing for close to 2 years now?
Yeah, so essentially it's a quest for power and control. What we must understand is a sovereign nation has a central system where defense and protection of the country must come from a line of command, a chain of command. So, but you have Tigrayans fighting the government at the center and not taking instruction from the center. It looks more or less like a secession attempt. And no country will accept a secession without fighting it back. What we should expect is cessation of war and conflict. However, this cannot happen in isolation. There has to be an understanding that people involved in this country, in this conflict, if they lay down their arms, they will not be dealt with. You get it? So they'll be welcomed and seen as co-travelers in this scheme of trying to have a better Ethiopia. The government at the center has been blamed to be overhanded. It has been blamed to have blocked supplies to the Tigrayan region, because hunger itself is a weapon for in war, where the tractors are being denied access to arms, access to food, access to water, starvation in the form that will make them submit. But it is catastrophic because of the human lives that have been lost, the innocent young people who are not involved or interested in the war, people who are just living their lives, and then they are caught in this whole conflict between both the TPLF and the central government of Abiy Ahmed.
Yeah, as you did said, it's a quest for power, which is actually what is ongoing there in the northern region of Ethiopia. Of course, seize the opportunity for peace. That's what the United Nations said to the Ethiopian government as well as rebels in northern Tigray region. Now, in your own opinion, what do you think is, given what's happening at the moment, what's your take on this message from the United Nations to those in Ethiopia?
Can you come again? I missed you a little.
Okay, yes. So I was citing a message from the United Nations to the Ethiopian government as well as rebels in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region.
Can you come again, please?
Yes, I was citing a message from the United Nations that means seize the opportunity for peace. That's what the United Nations has said, of course, to the Ethiopian government and the rebels in the northern Ethiopian Tigray region. Now, given what's happening in Ethiopia at the moment, especially in the Tigray region, given it's affecting the neighbors, what's your take on these recent developments, on this message sent by the United Nations? Hello, Shittu?
Yeah, I can hear.
Probably due to some connection issues. So I was asking regarding a message sent by the United
Is that what you said?
Nations. Yes, can you get us
Can you hear me?
505? Hello, Shitu. Okay, today we are discussing the Ethiopian crisis, especially that is ongoing in Tigray region. Of course, it has displaced millions of persons and led to the lives of different people there in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Of course, it's worth noting that this crisis, not just affecting the Horn of Africa, has led to a humanitarian crisis. As of course, just a few days ago, the rebels in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region did accept, of course, to take part in the African Union-led peace talks that was meant to put a stop to the crisis that is ongoing in Ethiopia. And of course, this crisis has been ongoing for close to 2 years now. And this measure, this move passed on by the rebels in Ethiopia's Tigray region was well welcomed by the United States and other members of the international community. Today we are discussing, after the persistent fighting that keeps on going there, what is the way forward in this edition of Voice It? And of course, we are with SHITTU, who is joining us all the way from Nigeria. And SHITTU, I was asking you that given a message sent from the United Nations to the Ethiopian government and of course the rebels in northern Tigray region in Ethiopia, that means seize the opportunity for peace. Given the recent development that is happening at the moment, what is your take on that message?
Yes, so it's a welcome message that the Tigrayan forces have agreed for a truce that will be mediated by the African Union. It is also understandable that the Ethiopian government is optimistic about the truce. However, we did hear, for example, that there was another airstrike, like a day ago. It's troubling that there may be people who do not want to see an end to this conflict, because there's an urgent need for this ceasefire, a humanitarian corridor to ensure that people who are distressed, people who are at risk of, death from, lack of access to healthcare facility and food aids, for example, are moved out of the region as quickly as possible. And then those who need to be helped while they are in Tigray can now receive help. This is important because it is avoidable disaster, in the sense that when you create a human corridor for humanitarian assistance, donations can come in, water supply can come in. You have fortified food supplies for children, cereals, for example. You also have aid in terms of health and medical aid that can get to people who need just very basic health supplies for them to be better. So it is a welcome development, and we hope both sides will look positively towards ensuring that it works and peace returns to Ethiopia.
Yeah, you mentioned that there was an airstrike, yes, just a few days ago. Of course, given this attack that took place just a few days, do you think peace is on the horizon for the Ethiopia's Tigray region?
We have always remained optimistic about the return of peace in the region. I am very sure most people affected by this conflict cannot wait to have a stable life again. Even the armed men who are involved in this conflict, soldiers, they cannot wait to see an end to it. The problem now is in the countries that are, interfering with the conflict. Countries like Ethiopia or like Eritrea, where mobilization is gone. Soldiers to get to the borders between Eritrea and Ethiopia, which is the Tigrayan corridor. So we are hopeful that things will work. There's international concern. The eyes of the world is on Ethiopia, and we are hoping that they will allow peace to reign. They will allow the voice of reason, to permeate the space, such that everyone who is concerned will be able to come back to the table and judge instead of to continue to war.
Exactly. You have cited a lot of powerful points that neighbors keep interfering in this conflict. Of course, it's said in Africa that when two people are fighting, it's not always good to interfere, because when they make peace, definitely you'll be seen as a bad person. Now, in your opinion,
Absolutely.
what do you think has been the impact of this crisis, not just on Ethiopia as a nation, but on the Tigray region, given that both the neighbors, equally like Amhara, Afar regions, have been affected by this war?
The first thing is the quality of life. Where in a war situation, the quality of life, is reduced to the barest minimum. People can barely live like every other human being. People cannot talk. People cannot go on hospitalities. People cannot go, for vacations. People cannot travel even between communities where families will visit themselves. The educational sector is badly affected. People cannot go to school, for over a year. They cannot go to school because there's fear of, attack from either of the sides. The fact that education is impacted is something really, really very disturbing. Again, you have business, you have small-scale businesses. There are people who rely on working on an everyday basis as a means of survival. People like that are almost at the verge of, of giving up, because as long as they are unable to trade, or transact on a daily basis, life is really a mess for them. There's also the issue of interstate and regional trade. Nobody wants to trade with a warring nation. Regional countries that used to come into Ethiopia to trade and invest and return back to their countries are unable to do that because of the continuous shelling of Tigray. Nobody knows what will happen. However, you look at the aviation sector of Ethiopia, for example, it has had the best performance in the whole of East Africa. That is surprising, considering the fact that the country is battling the Tigrayan forces for quite some time now. The Ethiopian Air has done wonderfully well as compared to the other regional aviation industries, like the Kenyan and the Ugandan aviation industry. Beyond that, you also have the ease of doing business. Ease of doing business has reduced in Ethiopia, and like I said, nobody wants to go into a place that has conflict situation. So there are critical issues of health, critical issue of infrastructural damage, because all of this shelling continues to impact on infrastructure. There's the issue of education being stagnated. There's so there's a whole lot that has been affected by this ongoing war, needless war, as I may put it.
Yeah, exactly. You have cited a lot of stuff. Of course, that's what is actually affecting Ethiopia at the moment, given that this crisis has been persisting and there's some kind of an unforeseen circumstance, unforeseen future regarding what is actually going to happen at any given moment. Now, an Ethiopian official once said that the international community has now more than ever to be asked, of course, to assist in resolving this crisis. Now, on several occasions, many analysts have said that the international community can assist in putting a stop to this crisis that is affecting Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. Now, given that several measures put in place in the past have failed so far. And most recently, the TPLF agreed to take part in AU-led a peace process. Now, how do you think the international community can assist in order to ensure that this crisis that has been ongoing for almost 2 years now comes to an end?
The immediate thing that I think of when there is a conflict situation, especially in an area that is affected or ravaged by poor rainfall, is the effect of the climate change. I would want to see a situation where a quick supply of potable drinking water is done, quick supply of food is done by international donors, and then the intervention should go straight to people who are in need of a health intervention, first aid, and a whole lot of people who need these interventions. People who are affected or traumatized by the war should also, be addressed as quickly as possible, because trauma is not easy to live by. Sometimes people who live around people who are traumatized are also pushed into becoming deadly, because people pick up arms, pick it up for so many reasons. Some are trying to resolve conflicted issues in their minds. Someone who has lost his parents, or who has lost a sibling, or a breadwinner, for example. So international community should be able to look at people who need medical intervention, who need food aid, who need water supply. In fact, everybody needs water supply. The entire region needs water supply, and it has to be as quickly as possible, so that as many lives as possible can be saved in the region. Again, there has to be an extraction of validation from both sides. Both sides must agree that there will be no measures that will worsen the security situation. For example, there is need for de-escalation of the war. The Tigrayan forces cannot continue to hold on to their arms and expect that there will be peaceful resolution. They must, release the arms in their possessions. Meanwhile, the government of Ethiopia itself must reassure the international community that they will not strike locations belonging to TPLF anymore. And so it is an issue of both sides, not one-sided. Both sides must agree genuinely to pursue peace and allow peace to reign.
We have seen cases of a crisis like this in other African countries, where both parties don't actually want to sit on the dialogue table to see how they can put a stop to the crisis. Now, an analyst once mentioned that given we're in the 21st century and there is a possibility of the two sections meeting together, not necessarily say together on a table, a dialogue table, but they could actually mediate the peace process, bring about a solution given technology itself. So what's your opinion on that development?
Yes, it is true that there could be meetings that are conducted virtually, where the concerned parties can address issues and reach a conclusion. Sometimes having to see physically is better, because there's a human side to it. You can feel, the mood, you can feel the apprehension, you can feel the fear and concerns of both sides when there's physical meeting, and then there are international observers who will come in to say,
yes,
who will come in to say, yes, we understand the issues at stake, but the lives of many are even more at stake, and there is need to come out stronger from this. So yes, meetings can be held virtually, but I'll be in support of meetings that are held physically, in one location, where all the forces can sit down and discuss and agree that these are the issues that must be quickly addressed in order to ensure peace building mechanisms work, throughout the system.
Yeah, of course, just to reiterate that the Horn of Africa is facing the adverse impact of climate change, as you earlier mentioned, SHITTU, and you equally cited that there should be some kind of disarmament process in order to ensure the international community that they are ready for a peace, a mediated peace process. Now, given the impact of climate change in Ethiopia at the moment, and the food crisis that is not just affecting the region but other parts of the African continent, do you think that peace is actually something that is assured given the humanitarian crisis that's affecting Ethiopia at the moment?
Well, regardless of how we look at it, peace is priceless. It is something we all yearn for. And both sides must do anything possible, everything possible to ensure that peace is restored in Ethiopia, and it's for the betterment of the region. Don't forget, there are other forces external to Ethiopia that will be happy if the ongoing war persists.
Yes.
For example, there's the Grand Renaissance Dam, which has been in contention for a while, and it is supposed to be a beacon that will ensure a breakthrough for Ethiopia. However, if Ethiopia continues in the crisis, continues to fight, continues in this conflict, it may not be able to realize, the full potential of the Grand Renaissance Dam. So that is one. Two, international communities should go beyond meetings, should be able to pressure. So because there are international contracts that have been signed, international bond that has been signed between Ethiopia and other UN agencies, for example, or global financiers, you have global lenders and the likes, who with Ethiopia has entered certain agreements. And so in continuing this war, they must make Ethiopia understand that as long as they continue this war, this escalation of crisis, they will not be able to, meet those bonds that had bind them before. And these are delicate. For example, when countries begin to withdraw their diplomatic missions in Ethiopia, it becomes very dicey, even for Ethiopians who are, for example, resident outside Ethiopia or who are working outside Ethiopia. So because if they are in a crisis situation or they are in need of help in those foreign nations, they may not be able to access minimal help or home support, because on both ends, you have diplomatic rows that will not make such citizens able to access the very basic help, diplomatic help that they should ordinarily have been able to access.
Just to stress that it has led to a lot of humanitarian crisis there in the Horn of Africa. Okay, so I'd like to ask you this question. What do you think needs to be done to address the humanitarian crisis that has been caused by the war in Ethiopia?
Yes, I mean, I did say earlier that we must avert it as much as quickly as we can. However, there has been mediations upon mediations. There has been an attempt to mitigate the effect of the ongoing conflict. What I just think is for both sides to listen more, to understand that the country is better and is bigger when all the forces align and have the same mindset. People can vary in terms of ethnicities, but there's a collective prosperity that exists when people put forces together. So international communities can encourage peace to reign by ensuring that both sides listen, by ensuring that both sides can, at least achieve minimum requirements. Because if you have 10 things to do to get, peace restored in the regions, these 10 things have to be domesticated, itemized, internalized, in the minds of the players. And then they are the ones that will ensure that peace reigns. For me, the AU has done pretty little or nothing. However, the AU is going to be mediating. The EU also is there. There are other regional forces who have somehow tried to intercede, or try to bring about peace in the region. And the more they do this, the better. I mean, because there is no cap. That there's no mark as to which how much you can do to stop conflict. As much as you can do to stop conflict, continue to do that until the issues are resolved. Again, some countries can offer what do you call it, temporary educational, will I call it succor, and by that they can say, okay, children affected by conflict and their mothers should be shiplifted or moved to regional countries within the region so they can access basic education, basic needs, and then their parents can begin to look towards alternative lease of life. Without doing that, the human catastrophe will be unimaginable because it's underreported. There's not much access to the region that is affected, and so what we get as snippets is really, really disturbing that the conflict has drawn this long. But like I said earlier, we are hopeful, we are prayerful, we are thinking that all the mechanisms to resolve this conflict will be put in place, and we'll have a sigh of relief.
Of course, we are hopeful that a peace is definitely going to return to Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, like every other country in Africa that is in war at the moment. You cited, I would like to reiterate what you said, that the AU or the African Union is putting in place measures to see how it can bring about peace, which of course you said is doing little or almost nothing. Now that there's the peace process that is going to be mediated by the African Union, we had some time ago the United Nations tried to see how it could bring about peace between both parties. Now all these measures, all these peace processes that have been done so far have failed. Now do you think that the peace process that is going to be mediated by the African Union is going to be fruitful when it comes to bringing a lasting solution to the crisis that is ongoing in Ethiopia's Tigray region?
Well, I think in spite of all that has been done in the past, we cannot give up and say that there are no other modalities that can be approached. It is a function of
right on, SHITTU.
It is understand and see the bright. You need to shell. Yeah, it will be easy to shell the regions that are antagonistic to the central government. However, we must continue to say that both the central government and the regional Tigray government must see beyond the current. They must see into the future, and that future will mean that each component of the society feels safe around themselves. You cannot, divorce the age-long rivalry between political parties and political blocs. It continues to rear its head. We must understand that leadership and governance is a collective and not a one-man's show. Yes, sure.
Okay. It's on that. I would like to ask you, you cited a lot of powerful points. What do you think is the way forward so that lasting peace can return to Ethiopia's Tigray region?
The first is disarmament. The Tigrayan forces have to disarm themselves. They must agree to work together with the government at the center.
Yeah, but SHITTU,
again, the second
sorry to cut you short, but then the Tigrayan rebels have agreed to take part in a peace process to bring about a ceasefire in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Now the Ethiopian government yet alertly striked. So I think both parties will have to agree to come to a disarmament process, so how to say.
Yes, so for the Tigrayan forces, there will be disarmament. But for the Ethiopian government, there will be a pause of hostility. Because the central government cannot refuse to use its arms. However, it is not expected to use its arms against its own citizens. Because, for example, if Ethiopia faces external aggression at the moment, it will need to defend itself.
Yeah,
So, and
exactly.
in defending itself, it has to maintain its military infrastructure, but it must not be at the expense of its own people. It must not be at the expense of peace. Because the situation is delicate. The more people see dead people, the more people see injured people and wounded people, the more likely they are not ready to stop fighting. But by the time you cease, unnecessarily shelling locations, there's a chance that people will say, well, it's been a long time we heard of attacks or deaths, or people being, beaten up, as the case may be. So probably this is, a sign that things can work. And so that is how, peace building starts, by earning trust of, both sides and working on it and pushing the frontiers to the best you can.
So, what do you think other African nations can draw from what is happening now in the Horn of Africa, precisely Ethiopia at the moment?
Come again, please.
So, I was asking, what do you think other African nations can draw from what is happening in Ethiopia at the moment?
Yes, there's a lot to learn. A lot of African countries are conflicted in the struggle for mineral resources, the struggle for power, especially for those who have stayed longer than necessary, in power and suppressing popular, wishes of the masses. They should understand that war is not sustainable. Peace is the only way out, and whatever is happening in Ethiopia must not be made to repeat itself, because it would be a humanitarian catastrophe. People would lose their lives, their money, their investment, and even their attachment to the history of the places, because places that have been destroyed can only hold a caricature of what existed before the events of the war. So African countries should learn that if they would rather not allow anarchy to reign, issues should be addressed immediately. They are popping up and require, collective decision making. The conflict in Ethiopia is really regrettable, but the best we can do is to hope for now that the issues will be resolved amicably.
Exactly, it's just for us to hope that the issues are resolved amicably between both parties. Now, the young generation, many a times, it's the youth or the young generation that take part in this conflict, that engage themselves in this conflict that are ongoing in different countries. We are citing Ethiopia, we're citing other African countries that are in conflict at the moment. So if you had to give a message to the young generation regarding how they can assist in bringing about peace to their respective African countries, what would that be?
For me, it should be about managing information. So you see, most times conflict will worsen when people continue to send viral messages that continue to incite violence, messages that are not conciliatory, messages that are highly divisive, some messages that are not verified or verifiable. So from the youngsters, the young minds, people who know that this generation owes them a lot of hope. Hope in the sense that this generation is the one that is most technology savvy, and should be able to say that instead of polluting the space with too many negative assumptions or even truths, it is better to continue to use their youthful energy in ways that can ennoble, that can improve things in their countries. Music has always been a very powerful tool to drive engagement, to drive the attention of the youngsters to something positive. Same as soccer. A lot of countries, are peaceful today because their youth have taken to soccer, and they would rather do that instead of engaging in war and crimes and other forms of other forms of war inciting activities. So communication is key, and it needs to be deployed positively for peace to reign in that country.
Of course, communication above all is very important when it comes to putting a stop to crises that are affecting different countries on the African continent. I would like to say, SHITTU, thank you immensely for joining me on today's edition of Voice It, as we were discussing the crisis that is ongoing in Ethiopia's Tigray region.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Just to reiterate that SHITTU is the digital news editor who's joining us all the way from Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, today we were understanding why fighting persists in Ethiopia's Tigray region after efforts put in place by the international community and of course members there in Ethiopia to see that they could broker a ceasefire. I was joined by SHITTU, who joined us all the way from Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, I have NJIX NABESEH for presentation. If you are watching us or following us on For You Radio, we have come to the end of Voice It over your Pan-African channel. Have a blessed day in company of our programs.